Click on the subscribe button, especially the bell on the right side. Otherwise, you will miss the latest videos.
Welcome everybody to the webinar of Saptarishis Astrology with Kṣaṇāti. And as you all know that today is Wednesday, so we are taking today the planet Buddha, that is Mercury. And I'm really happy that all of you are here to be part of this journey. So thank you so much all. And we have to present this none other than Kṣaṇāti. So Kṣaṇāti, welcome to the webinar. And before we start, wish you a very, very happy birthday. Guys, today is Kṣaṇāti's birthday. So happy birthday.
Thank you so much, Madhuraji. I just want to give a special thanks to you for all of your hard work and dedication to this work that we're doing together. I'd like to give a special thanks to Sunil John, the founder of this divine organization, Saptarishis Astrology. And he sent me a very sweet birthday note, so that was very nice of him. And always, even though he is so busy, and he doesn't have time to make it to all of these sessions, I always feel his presence. I always feel his energy, and I always feel his love and support. So I just wanted to give a special thanks to my big brother, Sunil John. Today we're doing a very exciting presentation on how to improve your planetary karma with Mercury. For those of you who have been us before through the various planetary karma series, we've been going over each graha and understanding the karmic nature of that planet. Once we understand the karmic nature of that, it differentiates karmically from depending on sign, depending on house, depending on conjunction. Then we will focus how to improve the karma with that planet. Oh, by the way, thank you everyone for the birthday wishes. Very kind and warming to my heart. And Mercury. Now, why have I chosen Mercury for my birthday? Well, it seems appropriate at some level for a few different reasons. One is that Mercury is my Atmakaraka. It's the presiding graha in my chart in terms of operating power. So as far as a lot of the energy that, may come from me, that there's all sorts of different energies. I'm ruled by Saturn with Rahu in the first house, but also you get a strong influence from Mercury because Mercury is my Atmakaraka. And then I'm in the latter portion of my Saturn Mahadasha, which means in a few years I'll be transitioning to my Mercury Mahadasha. So it's also kind of my future and my potential and my trajectory. And my Mercury is in Scorpio in the 10th house, which has significations for careers in astrology because of the sign of Scorpio, and Mercury being the planet of communication. So my Mercury in the 10th house also signifying my career or work in the field of astrology. And so I thought today would be a very auspicious day to focus on Mercury. And also, there's been a lot of crazy things that have been happening with Mercury lately in its transition between Scorpio, Sagittarius, and Capricorn, and it going retrograde for a lot of this period as well. So we'll go into detail about that as well. But I just want to thank everyone for joining me today on my birthday to do this How to Improve Our Karma with Mercury webinar. It is my deepest pleasure and honor, and I'm so grateful. And again, thank you, Madhuraji. Okay, fantastic. So today we'll be doing our seventh of our planetary karma series. Today we're Buddhaya, or Buddha This is the emblem of intelligence. The representation of the intellect is one of my favorite and easiest descriptions of Mercury. And today we're going to focus on how to activate our maximum intelligence. So we're looking at intelligence in terms of potential and how we can activate that maximum potential. Also, we want to empower our communication. Communication comes out at that with Mercury, speaking, writing, and many other ways as well. But we want to empower that. We also want to get to the full potential in our communicative abilities. And by improving planetary karma with Mercury, there's an ability to do that. And then ultimately, on a more metaphysical or spiritual level, we want to embody the soul's message, because Mercury is the messenger. On a deep level, it represents our soul. Also, to improve our planetary karma with Mercury, we want to embody what the soul's message is. And of course, before we can embody the soul's message, first we have to understand what it is. This is just website, email, Facebook. If you have any questions after our presentation today, or you're interested in any of my professional services, you can always contact me, and here's the best way to do that. So I've broken this webinar down into 6 different parts / 7 different parts, because the things I did is I posted on the Kṣaṇāti Jyotish Facebook event page. I did a poll. And I took about 20 to 30 different figures, and I said to the community of my page, of all of these different figures, which one shall we see in the end of the webinar? So the different members of the community have voted, and we're going to look at the Mercury karma with Paramahamsa Yogananda at the end of our webinar today, because he had the most votes as far as what everyone wanted to see. And then second was Freddie Mercury, the lead singer of Queen, and I just kind of felt like Yogananda was just the proper choice here. So the beginning of our webinar will be spent discussing karma with Mercury, the nature of Mercury manifests throughout someone's lifetime. So we'll take an in-detail look at the nature of Mercury karma. And then we'll look at Mercury or Buddha's current position. It is currently in the sign of Sagittarius. It is transitioning back into different bhava because of retrograde position. So we'll look at the current position of Mercury, and then also the future condition of Mercury, because it can go back, because right now Mercury is retrograde in the Sagittarius. So we'll talk about all of the influence of Mercury's current position. So to get an understanding of, okay, this is Mercury's energy right now, which is influencing all of us in this way. Then we will go into more specific detail on how Buddha karma, how Mercury karma is variates, or how it differentiates based on the dignity, based on the sign that Mercury is traveling, based on the planets that Mercury is going to be conjunct with. This is very important in understanding Mercury karma and its unique manifestation, because the manifestation is very specific to the planetary dignity. And as we get into what the soul's message is, the combination of Mercury and its sign is a representation of the type of message which the individual soul carries. Then we will focus on how to improve Budaya or Mercury. We're going to go with ancient practices, Ayurvedic practices that we can integrate into our lives to improve our planetary karma with Mercury. And this is the most important part of the webinar, in my opinion, because yes, it is very helpful to know how the karma is affecting us. But if we are not seeking to improve that karma, well, then what is the point? And so this is the, we'll go into a large detail about how to improve the planetary karma there. Then we will go over community examples of Buddha karma. So there are different members of the community who have sent in certain examples to me before our session today, for me to analyze and focus on their Mercury karma, and then how to improve their specific planetary karma with Mercury. So I've integrated 4 examples from the Saptarishis community, and one of them is the Divine Madhuraji. So we'll all be very excited to look at her chart together. And then after we look at the community examples, we'll touch on that celebrity example that was voted on, Yogananda, and we'll kind of just do that in an improvisational way, although I have taken some notes on that. And so after Yogananda, we will, if we have time, because if we have already gone 4 hours, we might not be feeling like doing much of the live questioning. But if things have moved quickly, sometimes we'll have some time for live questions, where those of you who have attended the webinar but did not send your questions in will be able to kind of ask your questions live and have them answered live towards the end of the session. And then we'll kind of conclude and just go over a few of the main details, and at that point, hopefully there's a deep understanding of the nature of Mercury karma, as well as how to focus our energy to improve that karma. So I'm very excited for our session today, and I hope all of you are as well.
Yes, truly. Wonderful.
Great. So I always like to start these webinars by summoning the planet, summoning the graha, bringing the energy of that planet into our session. And so to begin this session, I will like to start with traditional Mercury mantra. If you recognize this mantra, I will love it wherever you are in the world if you will chant along. But if you prefer meditation during this portion of the webinar, that is also very nice. So it's really up to your preference. I'm going to do a short silent meditation, then 3 Om, and then I'm going to get into the Mercury mantra for us all to begin to really feel this energy of Budaya, the emblem of intelligence. In other words, let's turn our intelligence on before we even start this webinar.
Yes, exactly. Priyangu Karaka Shamam Rupenya Pratimam Buddham Samyam Samyaguna Patam Aham Priyangu Karaka Shamam Rupenya Pratimam Buddham Samyam Samyaguna Patam Budam Pranamam Yahom Priyangu Karaka Shamam Rupenya Pratimam Buddham Samyam Samyaguna Patam Budam Pranamam Yahom Priyangu Karaka Shamam Rupenya Pratimam Buddham Samyam Samyaguna Patam Budam Pranamam Yaham.
Om Brahm Brim Braum Saha Budaya Nama. Om Braum Saha Budaya Nama. Om Braum Saha Budaya Nama. Om Brahm Brim Braum Saha Budaya Nama. Hari Om, Om Namah Shivaya. Namaste. Welcome, Mercury.
Wonderful it was.
Thank you, Madhurji. So first we will look in detail as to the nature of Mercury karma. Now, Mercury karma has many different aspects, and even though we're going to focus on all of the major aspects today and some of the minor aspects, there will always be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of minor aspects which also show up with this planet. So we're really going to be focusing on the most powerful, the most common, and the most significant aspects of Mercury karma. Now, it's very interesting that both ancient Greek or Roman culture and philosophy, and then Vedic or the Hindu lineage share the same basic understanding of Mercury. So I always think that this is particularly amazing or wonderful when two different countries or two different cultures from different parts of the world at different times believe the same thing. That means that there is something so accurate about their perception that these two cultures have the same basic understanding. And so basically that is Budaya is Mercury is the messenger of the gods. Okay. Now, it is with this inherent or divine energy as messenger of the gods that Mercury represents the full knowledge of the divine message. And when I say divine message, that's a message of truth, spirituality, and integrity. So divine message doesn't mean that it's necessarily spiritual in its nature. A divine message just means that it is true. Integrity between what is being said. And here we're equating divinity and truth. Okay. Now, Mercury karma aims to put the individual in full alignment with the divine message. That means that when we are to improve our planetary karma with Mercury, basically we have to be in alignment with what the divine message is in our lifetime, which dictates or suggests that one must what the individual message their soul carries, or this unique brand of the divine message, which each is unique to every. So basically, the Mercury karma is aiming to put you into a relationship with what is your unique message. Now, Mercury karma influences these unique individual soul messages, which are like different aspects of truth. In other words, just because you have one message and that somebody else has a different message doesn't mean that only and another message is untrue. That is not correct, because basically they're just different aspects of truth. So this individual's Mercury karma has them representing this unique aspect of truth. Then this individual's Mercury karma has them representing this unique aspect of truth. Both of their messages can be true, but they might have no understanding of what each other's messages are. So it's a very unique, individualized message at the first layer of the Mercury karma. Now, when you look at the house position of Mercury, the planetary dignity or the sign that Mercury is in, and the nakshatra that Mercury is traveling in, this particular aspect is emphasized, which the native is to know. So basically, to find out what your specific individual soul message is, you have to look at the sign of Mercury, the house of Mercury, and the nakshatra of Mercury. And if you look at these details, they will reveal exactly to you what your individual message is. Your unique message. Now, karma with Mercury manifests in 3 different parts. So when we're looking at Mercury Mahadasha, this is how Mercury Mahadasha happens. It happens in these 3 different parts. And whenever we are working on our karma with Mercury, it manifests in these 3 different parts. Basically, these are the nature of how the Mercury karma manifests. The first is the study of the knowledge, and basically that means knowing what the message is. The second part is embodying that message, living your life in an example by it, and actually making a difference with that knowledge. And then the third level is that expression of the soul on the deepest of levels. Now, when we look at this into a more specific timeline, the first step of our karmic process with Mercury is understanding the type of knowledge your soul is meant to contain in this lifetime. In other words, if we don't know what our message is, then we have bad karma with Mercury. In other words, the first level of having good karma with Mercury is understanding what is your message and what is the knowledge that you represent. If you cannot understand what your message is and what is the knowledge that you represent, and you cannot get into these evolutionary aspects with Mercury, because this is the first step. So the first step is to have the. You can't do anything with any knowledge that you don't have. So obviously the first step here is coming to understand what your soul is meant to know and carry as far as a message. In other words, what type of knowledge are you meant to represent? That's the first step. This knowledge, as I mentioned, can be figured out what type of knowledge it is, or what type of information, or what type of message it is, can be found by looking at this sign, nakshatra, and house position of Mercury. And when we get into Mercury planetary dignity, we'll be looking at some of these individual unique messages depending on the position. Now, if a chart is ruled by Mercury, that means Gemini or Virgo Lagna. If they are in activated Mercury, which means Mercury Mahadasha, Mercury Antardasha, or a return of Mercury in their chart. This will activate the process which uses the buddhi, which is the discretionary factor of our consciousness, the intellect, that which analyzes, to comprehend and expand one knowledge, specifically as it relates to this individual soul message. So if we're going through our karma with Mercury, whether Mercury Mahadasha, Mercury return, or we're just ruled by Mercury, then the intelligence is trying to always understand what one's message is, which means it's trying to grow in its knowledge. So this is the representative of the first step as well, which is heavily activated with Mercury, is to one's knowledge. One's knowledge as far as what is the type of knowledge which they are supposed to learn and supposed to represent throughout this lifetime. So that's the kind of the first level of our evolutionary process with Mercury karma. And if we can't understand what knowledge we are supposed to have or what message we are supposed to be representing, then we can't get into the deeper levels of our Mercury karma. So I really emphasize that this is the first step. And if you can't get past this first step, there's a challenging karma with Mercury. The second step of our karmic evolutionary process comes after we completely and fully understand rationally and logically what individual message our soul carries and are seeking to embody that message. So once we already have an understanding of what our soul's knowledge that we are supposed to carry throughout this lifetime, well, then after that point, we seek to embody that message, or we seek to represent that message. We go from talking the talk to walking the walk. So this is the next step of the evolutionary process with Mercury. In other words, sometimes we get stuck through our first level of our evolutionary process with Mercury, which means we have knowledge, we can talk about it, but do we live our life by that example? Not necessarily. Do we embody that message in everything we do? Not necessarily. And are we constantly sharing that message with all of our heart, with all of our soul, with all of our enthusiasm? Not necessarily. And so that's why this second step of our improvement with Mercury karma is really important. That once we know what the message is, that we embody that message, that we represent that message. And so then with full knowledge of what the soul's message is, those with this strong activated Mercury karma begin to embody this soul's message and knowledge which they have found. So basically, they go from studying, learning, acquiring the knowledge, which is the student, to representing that knowledge, which puts them into the position of more to be like a teacher. And so this is kind of the transformation of Mercury karma, which takes us from student to teacher. And so this is very powerful and essential. Now, this means the native not only knows this unique aspect of knowledge and their understanding that this is their message, this is their purpose to carry this message, but they are in the process of representing that knowledge and truth in their everyday life. So there should never be actions that those with good Mercury karma take that go against their message. If they take an action that goes against what they're studying or goes against what is the message what they're supposed to carry, again, you're looking at a challenging vibration with Mercury karma. You really need to, with what your message and your knowledge is, to have good planetary karma with Mercury. So again, when we look at, okay, how is my planetary karma with Mercury? You have to look at what step you are in this process. The third and final step of our karmic evolution with Buddhaya, once the other two steps are complete. So again, you can't just jump over the other two steps and get right to the reward of the evolutionary process. But once there is a complete logical and soul level of understanding of what the message you carry is, and you are able to embody that through who you are, then it is part of the third process to share that message. So basically, it's a three-part process in our evolutionary process with Mercury, and depending on where Mercury sits in all of these things, we are either in the first step, second step, or third step. But you can see how for every individual, we kind of fall in this process in our Mercury. And so, so this final step is only possible after you have completed the majority of your knowledge or study of what the message is, and you are able to walk the walk, able to embody this learning. You are able to embody this message in everything that you do. Now, once you do this, you have all that knowledge and it's embodied in who you are. Then the karma is to carry, share, and express that message. So here is some of the challenge that people get in their evolutionary process with Mercury. They want to express their message fully understand what it is, or B, are able to. People in their evolutionary process with Mercury, you should have complete knowledge of what you're saying and be able to live your life by that example before you really share that message. That is why in this full evolution, because otherwise there is some level of hypocrisy. There is some level of, even though I know this message and I'm sharing it, well, I can't live my life that way. In other words, some people say, do what I say, not what I. People also have bad planetary karma with Mercury. They say, do what I say, but not what they do, because they are not able to live in their life with alignment in terms of what they say. Therefore, they can't achieve the full evolutionary process with Mercury. So here, once you are and know all of its different aspects, then you carry, share, and express that message with complete confidence, with complete courage, with complete enthusiasm, and with complete determination. Because once you know that message 100% and you represent that message, it will be easy to share. That is why some people have, sometimes it's hard to share, it's hard to communicate, it's hard to express. And they say, oh, that's because of my Mercury. Well, there's a way to work through this karma. You have to know your knowledge at the deepest of level, and you need to represent it. If so, then the communication of it should be natural and should be easy, because this third step only comes after the first two steps are really aligned to properly. And so this is also the nature, the karmic nature of Mercury, but also in understanding that nature, how we can work with those vibrations. This karmic process of the messenger, which is searching for the message, that's the first part. It finds the message, that's still the first part. Then once the messenger searches for the message and finds it, then they embody it. And then once that messenger embodies the message, then with all of the power and confidentiality, confidence, expresses that message. So it is this process of determining the message and expressing it that is deep within the karmic evolutionary process with Buddhaya. So basically, this is the karmic nature of Mercury. There's a message it wants us to know. We are to seek and understand what that message is, usually through study of some kind, some type of knowledge. Once we acquire that knowledge, it should be the next step that we embody and that we represent that knowledge and that we follow that knowledge in everything that we do. In other words, let's say it's my unique message to follow the yamas and niyamas, like it was for Yoganandaji. That was part of his message, the following of the yamas and niyamas. Well, if you're not able to follow the yamas and niyamas yourself, you should not be going around spreading the message that you should be following the yamas and niyamas. That's skipping the second step. You learn the knowledge, then you don't embody it, and then you go and you share it. This also can cause bad karma with Mercury, maybe even in the next lifetime, if we try to skip this middle step, which is we have to represent this knowledge. So that's just a little bit of how Mercury karma manifests. I hope that was helpful to look at. Now, Mercury is called Buddhaya in Sanskrit, which means the emblem of intelligence. And therefore, Mercury karma activates our relationship with the intelligence, the intellectual, the logical, and the rational. It's connected to, Mercury activates the buddhi, which is the discretionary factor, which analyzes, computates, and understands. We know this as the rational or logical part of ourselves. And Western science would show us that this part of the consciousness takes place on the right side of the brain. This is basically that because Mercury activates the buddhi, it activates the intellect, it activates the discretion, the rational, and the logical. And so those with good karma with Mercury have a good relationship with the logical. They have a good relationship with the rational, and they have a good relationship with the intellectual potential. Now, Mercury karma influences intelligence, the reasoning ability, and rational understanding specifically for each native. So depending on the sign of Mercury, depending on and when we get into dignity, we'll be looking at the specific how the intelligence and the reasoning ability is uniquely influenced. But basically, the intelligence is influenced depending on the position of Mercury. So you have to look at the very specific of Mercury in the natal chart to kind of understand how the intelligence is being influenced. Now, Mercury karma activates our full intellectual potential and seeks to find complete rational and logical understanding in whichever area of life Mercury sits. That means if Mercury's in the second house, you need a logical understanding of materiality and wealth. If you need, if you have Mercury in the seventh house, you need to have logical partner and a partner who is going to logically understand you. If you have Mercury in the 10th house, logic logical understanding and your intelligence is an important part of the career or the work that you're doing. So again, it activates our full intellectual potential in terms of understanding something logically in whichever area of life Mercury sits. Okay, so Mercury karma activates the need for the native to use their intellectual faculties. In our evolutionary process with Mercury, our intelligence and communicative abilities must be fully empowered and utilized. In other words, let's say there is no activated Mercury karma in somebody's chart, and Mercury is weak in the chart. Well, then this person goes into a Mercury period, let's say Mercury Mahadasha, and then not only is there this influence that they should become slightly more intelligent, but all of a sudden their intelligence becomes the biggest part of their life. Maybe before they didn't even have to use their intelligence, but now because they go in Mercury Dasha, the intelligence is the most important thing. So when Mercury is activated, we are supposed to be using our intelligence. If we are in Mercury period and we are not using intelligence, that is out of alignment. That is not improving our karma with Mercury. This could cause challenges with Mercury. So basically, that intelligence has to be used whenever the Mercury karma is activated. Now, when Mercury is strongly influencing the Dharma Bhava houses in one's chart, or as the Maha or Antardasha Lord, it is suggested that the intellect and the Dharma are deeply connected. So if Mercury is in the first house, the fifth house, or the ninth house, this kind of suggests that there is a connection between the intelligence and the Dharma, which is your purpose here. So if Mercury has rulership of these houses, or you find Mercury in these houses, there's something about your intelligence that is part of your Dharma. Therefore, for you to not use your intelligence would be adharmic, outside of Dharma. Therefore, it suggests that you have to use your intelligence to be in alignment with your Dharma. This is very interesting because a lot of time people who are spiritual put a negative connotation on intelligence. They say, oh, intelligence is the opposite of faith. If you have intelligence, then you doubt, then you question, you need logical answer. But from an astrological perspective, intelligence is a part of many people's dharma, and it's a part of many people's moksha. So basically, I think that there should be no negative connotation with the word intelligence or with our intellect. This is something that is part of our process, and I would imagine that the people who are on a spiritual path, who are anti-intellect, that they have bad karma with Mercury. So depending on the position and dignity of Mercury, this intelligence can be a unique, challenged, or superior gift. So if Mercury is in the first, fifth, or ninth house, or you're in Mercury Mahadasha, it's important that your Dharma is connected towards your intelligence. But let's say that your Mercury is debilitated. Well, to use your intelligence, if the Mercury is debilitated, this is a great challenge. So it's saying that just because Mercury, it's your Dharma, use your intelligence, doesn't mean that it's easy. You also have to look at, is Mercury acting as a functional benefic here? So is Mercury functionally benefic in the individual chart? That will show that or there will be no huge challenge in the intelligence of the individual. So it's easier. But some people need to work through this karma, and so it can still be a challenge even if it is part of your Dharma. Now, the native will have to use their intelligence and communication abilities to achieve success and prosperity if Mercury sits in or rules the second, the sixth, or the 10th house. So now we're looking at the specific bhavas of Mercury and kind of what they influence. If Mercury's in the second house, the sixth house, or the 10th house, you have to use your intelligence for success and prosperity. Often this is indicated that the intelligence is used to make money, or the intelligence is used as part of the career. So if Mercury's in the second house, the intellect is used to make money. These people are good for investors. They know good investment. For those of you who have Mercury in the 10th house, the intelligence is a part of the career. This is good for writers. This is good for speakers. This is good for people who are teachers, because this is a representation that the intelligence is a part of the work that they're doing. But of course, you have to look at the sign and aspects or conjunctions as well. Now, the native will have to use their intelligence to manifest their dreams and aspirations, your dreams, without using your intelligence. In other words, there's a relationship between using your logic and intelligence and achieving your dreams if Mercury rules or is in the Artha houses, which is the third house, the fifth house, the seventh house, and the 11th house. Now, I included the fifth house because it aspects the 11th house. So if Mercury sits in the fifth house, but basically, yeah, the third house, the seventh house, and the 11th house are really good for using your intelligence to manifest your dreams. Now, as mentioned, if Mercury is in the fourth house, in the 8th house, and the 12th house especially, sometimes in the 4th house, but even stronger in the 8th and the 12th house, there is a relationship between intelligence and moksha. This is a very interesting energy. We could talk a lot about it. But when there is a relationship with intelligence and moksha, there are two different ways this kind of manifests. One is you have to use your intelligence to understand what moksha is. This is people who nation, like the Tibetan Book of the Dead. It helps them understand logically, rationally, what happens when you die, the reincarnation process, the process of karma. In other words, to understand what moksha is, these people have to use their intellect, which means there has to be a logical understanding, maybe if they've read it or been taught it, what the moksha is. But that also, ultimately, when there is a connection between moksha and intelligence, that the intelligence is like something that prevents us from moksha. So even though we use intelligence to understand what moksha is, that ultimately you have to have faith and trust and surrender the intelligent understanding of moksha. So it might, understanding what moksha is using the intellect might be the beginning of the evolutionary process with the moksha Buddha relationship, but that ultimately one has to surrender their intellectual understanding of things for their evolution. So Mercury karma activates our full potential in terms of evolution, intellectual capacity. And so basically Mercury represents how smart we can become. And there's a direct relationship. There have been studies that show there is a direct relationship between the IQ of an individual and the strength or the position of their Mercury. For example, I'm the oldest of 4 siblings. My brother, he has exalted Mercury. His IQ is 10 points higher than all of the other siblings. So there's basic energy here, and he's like genius. So basically there is this energy where there is a relationship between our intellectual potential, how smart we are, and Mercury. This includes a certain amount of knowledge or ability as it relates to history, science, math, language, and literature. Okay, Mercury karma activates our full potential as well in terms of humor, comedy, and the expression of wit. This is one of my favorite energies as far as the intellectual power. Yeah, our intellect manifests in our knowledge of science, math, and language. But it also manifests in a comedy. Sometimes these people are like book smart. They have a really dry sense of humor. And then other aspects of Mercury, they might not be that book smart, but they could have an amazing witty sense of humor. In other words, usually comedians is one of their strongest planets. And usually it's in a position that has to do with their work or their dharma. So it actually says in the ancient text that Mercury, Buddhaji, has a good sense of humor. because of the connection of intelligence. So what is wit? What is humor? It's basically your ability to understand something very quickly and then make a joke based on it. So wit and intelligence or comedy are deeply connected. You cannot be funny without intelligence. And so basically there is this vibration. Also, it activates our sense of humor. It activates our relationships to comedy and our comedy abilities in ourselves. It is part of this evolution, looking at some remedy aspect, but part of the karma with Mercury is that to improve develop our sense of humor. Those people with bad senses of humor have bad relationship with Mercury. And it might also have to do with the lack of intelligence. But usually comedy is an intelligence. If you are not finding it funny, maybe you're missing the joke. In other words, maybe the joke is over your head. So basically, to improve our karma with Mercury, you have to develop your sense of humor. And the specific type of comedy of Mercury is wittiness or quick-minded humor. This is often what we call situational comedy. And shows that kind of have to do with Mercury vibration are kind of situational comedies or sitcoms. So Mercury karma also activates our karmic evolution as it relates to social communication. And communication comes from intelligence. So Mercury activates all of our aspects as it relates to communication. Now, specifically to social communication is stronger for a Gemini influence than a Virgo influence, because Gemini has a very specific indication for this social intellectual ability. In other words, social relationship is also something that requires a great amount of intellect. You have to understand this person's consciousness is functioning on this level, that's how you communicate to them. This person's consciousness is functioning on, so ultimately, for the greatest amount of social ability, intelligence is extremely, so we talked about all of the major aspects of Mercury. Subtle aspects, comedy and social energy. Our ability to relate to others, individuals, based on our thinking ability and reasoning. That is this social relationship. This is often why those individuals with similar intelligence find each other in life as friends. You to relate to each other. In other words, the type of people communicating with on some level are people who think similarly to you for the greatest quality of interaction. But again, there's a diversity, think differently. But this is often why people are attracted to people with similar levels of intelligence or that think similarly. And so it is part of our karmic evolutionary process with Buddhaji act. And we are to communicate with individuals as far as to improve our quality of Mercury that have equal or greater intelligence. This means that you have to be careful about your level of interaction with people who do not use their intelligence or who you would describe as maybe not being as intellectual as you, because your Mercury karma with people who are smarter than you. In other words, you're with people who are more intelligent than you. But it can challenge your Mercury karma if you are with people who lack intelligence. So that doesn't mean that you can't hang out with your friend just because he's not very smart and you are. It just means that you have to be careful. Intelligence is influencing yours or her. So, as mentioned, Mercury karma activates the buddhi, which is the discretionary or intellectual part of our consciousness. Due to this activation of the buddhi, there is an inherent analytical ability. So, basically, the buddhi is a discretionary thing, which means it analyzes. So, the buddhi is an analytical process. So, it automatically, whenever Mercury the buddhi is activated. And therefore, it activates an intense intellectual and analytical process. So ultimately, when Mercury karma is activated, it's also activating an intellectual or a logical analysis of something. And those people who are Gemini or Virgo Lagna, they analyze everything that they see. Those people with Mercury in the Lagna, they analyze everything that they see. They can't even help it. This isn't a negative thing. It just means that they can't really observe something without trying to logically understand what it is. This analytical process that I'm talking about, the buddhi, it divides a larger single unit into a complete collection of its individual parts. So those people with strong Mercury karma, they don't just see a barrel of apples. They see 100 individual apples. Okay? So it takes the one thing and it divides it to all of its individual parts. If you're looking at a computer, you can see all the microchips. If you're looking at a meal, you can see the specific ingredients of the meal. And so, or the spices that are being used. Because, when a Mercury person is eating a meal, they go, I can really taste this cardamom. Oh, I can really taste this ginger. They note every individual aspect. So to improve our karma with Mercury is to use this analytical process. Now, obviously, if this is out of balance, it can be stressful, and you want to be able to turn it off. But basically, this analytical process is deeply connected to Mercury. So the intelligence and discretion in this analytical process allows the native to comprehensively see all flaws, strengths, and neutral aspects of what they are observing. This is the nature of intelligence. And by the way, this is really strong with the sign of Virgo. So this vibration is really strong with Virgo. If you have Virgo strong in your chart, there will also be this vibration. But that basically, when the buddhi gets activated and it begins to see all the individual parts of something, Mercury is all about making things better, improving things to an ideal condition. Therefore, when it is analyzing something, it sees all of its flaws. It sees the flaws to remove them. It also sees all of the strengths to embody them. So basically, this analytical process that is activated with Mercury karma, it always sees the good, the bad, and the ugly. And basically, they can't help it. So when they see the ugly, when they see the weaknesses, when they see the flaws, those are important because the logic is focusing on them because those flaws are there so that they can be removed, so that those flaws can be turned into strengths. So it's not like negative thinking. It is like the intellect is focusing on the weaknesses of something so that they can be improved. A lot of times people see this Mercury karma and they're like, oh, this people is always seeing the negative of everything. No, they're just using their intellect to notice the flaws, and those flaws are there so that they can be removed. They will also notice the strengths, or the intellect will focus on that, and it will empower that, also improving something to its ideal condition. Now, this analytical gift and aspect of Mercury karma serves to improve various aspects of life, as I mentioned, to their most ideal condition. This energy is often described as purification. So there energy which is associated with Mercury, and again, it's stronger with Virgo than Gemini. But basically, this purification is to notice all of the flaws and remove them. Then something has been purified. So the analytical buddhi process of Mercury sees these flaws so they can be removed. The analytical process of Mercury sees the strengths so they can be emphasized and focused on. The analytical process of Mercury also sees all of the neutral aspect of everything, which means once the intelligence notices all the flaws, then the intelligence notices all the strength. Well, then it also will notice everything that's in the middle. And so this is also this understanding of what is neutral is also helpful for improving things to their ideal quality. So this karmic vibration of Buddhaya, which is connected to the buddhi, is connected to purification and improving things to their ideal state. This improvement process takes place when we use our intellect.